What's up, y'all? What is up? What's going on? Hope the music's not too loud. Let me try and see if I can reduce the volume a little bit. I hope y'all can hear me. The mic's not. Yeah, my mic's working. What am I talking about? All right. Let me see if I can reduce that volume a little bit. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I am going to dig into how I'm going to set up my demo. I'm actually going to be presenting a talk at Civo Navigate in about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. I don't know. I can't remember. Time's just flying right now. Um, but I basically have to, you know, um, figure out what my demo's gonna look like. I don't have a lot of time, but what I should be doing is actually getting it, up and running. What it's gonna look like. I should probably make some notes somewhere. And I'm thinking the best place to do that is on GitHub. So let me log into GitHub. Let me show my screen. Actually, before I do that, I'll log in. And I just want to create a new repo here so that I have access to it. Let me go ahead and present my share screen. Interesting. Actually, window. Let's share this window. Okay. Not that one. Okay. All right. Yeah, there's a bunch of repo stuff here that I haven't really touched. I don't know. Maybe I'm following a bunch of people and their activities showing up here. But that is all cool. Let us go to my repos. Repos. Let's go create a new repo. And we'll call this Civo nav demo. All right, it's going to be public. Y'all can read it because I want y'all to be able to download this and try this out for yourself at some point. README. I'll come back and address the license type afterwards. All right, Civo nav demo. What are we going to do here? So let's give it a description. We are going to create an edge compute demo that will consist of a variety of open source tech plus maybe some closed source tech as well. I was thinking we could use the Linkfree app. So for those of you that are not familiar with Linkfree, Linkfree is an excellent place to kind of store all of your different links to your social media profiles, your any kind of work that you've done, your blogs, any sort of videos that you've made. Sorry, made it. What kind of word is made it? I am so off today. I need another coffee. But Linkfree is great because if you're trying to display something, like I'm going to go head over to Linkfree right now, and it's over at EddieHub. For those of you that don't know, EddieHub is a community of folks that come to collaborate and contribute on open source. Go over to the Discover tab. You will notice that there are all these different Linkfree profiles. There's Dean, there's Perdumna, there's Eddie, there's Harsh, there's Krish. Let's look for me. I just want to show you what Linkfree looks like. Also, I want to be able to remember myself in about 20 years or so. So there's mine. There's my Linkfree profile. Whatever. One thing though is that Eddie hosts Linkfree on EddieHub as some separate component. So it has to consume compute resources somewhere. What I plan to do is I actually plan to take those resources and drop it at the edge. Basically, my resources are going to come from the edge. So let's assume if you can kind of see what's going on back there. I know you can't because it's load out. I've actually got a NUC there, or a set of 3 NUCs there that I actually will be using to, simulate an edge environment. Now, I have a very I guess I'm privileged in a certain way that at my home, I actually have a very fast internet connection. I've got 3 gigs, sorry to brag. 3 gigs up and down is a lot. So I can do a lot in terms of ingress and egress data processing, or a lot of traffic can come in and out of this environment if I needed it to. Now, the interesting thing though is I am not operating a cloud environment. Basically, I've got 3 NUCs that sit on top of some little decimal environment thingy, and they're gonna participate in this like edge compute like environment. My goal is to I should actually draw this up. My goal is to actually set up a little environment that runs link free on top of Kubernetes, which is then going to be protected by a service mesh. And the reason I'm using a service mesh is because I want something that gives me the ability to get into my cluster and communicate with objects that Linktree has, in addition to like, providing some sort of security layer, and then also having points for observability. I mean, yeah, okay, I work for a company that talks a lot about service mesh. That's okay. I am okay with that because this my demo is going to be based off of service mesh, but I want to add in some of the components here. So, um, demo build list, and I'm gonna make this another section, and we're gonna have Civo Cloud, right? Why I'm having Civo Cloud, this is important as my management layer. Now, this is important because let's just say someone was thinking along the lines of, hey, I want to do this in production somewhere at some point. I need ideas. Well, let me tell you something. Running multi-cluster service mesh is actually not easy. You actually go to the documentation to set up with let's say Istio, trying to do like locality, load balancing and whatnot. It's actually not easy to just get going. So you kind of have to use a lot of like manual configurations, or use a layer. Our management layer is going to use Civo Cloud. That management layer would probably be something like Blue Mesh. We're going to use Kubernetes. And by the way, there's going to be 2 parts to it, right? In the cloud, in Civo Cloud, it'll probably be K3s. In the private cloud, or edge cloud, I should say, edge, it'll probably be Kind. The reason why it's going to be Kind is because in terms of what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to reduce the overall amount of resources being consumed. Now, Kind is just a style, a way to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. I don't know if it's been widely used in production. Maybe it has been and we just don't know about it. But there are instances where people are using it for things like building. For example, I found this out recently that you can actually set up a GitHub runner to deploy a Kind cluster on top of that runner and then deploy something like Istio. I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't even know that GitHub had that capability. I'll learn about it someday, and figure out how to do something like that. But in this demo, I want to make sure that on the edge side I use Kind, and there's a specific other reason why that is. I'll call that in a second. And then I'm also going to deploy Istio service mesh at edge. Actually, it's going to be the ambient flavor, ambient mesh. The reason why I'm doing that is because, again, it comes down to resources. If I had to deploy a Raspberry Pi or something that was super small scale, much like my NUC, that had maybe a limited set of CPU, a limited set of memory, and even disk, maybe if I only even had one, and I don't have a lot of room to run a lot of resources, right? So the thing to consider here is those nuts back there. I'll add them in right now. Oops, 3 times nuts. I don't know. I don't need 3. I can get away with 1. But what I want to call out is each has 4 CPU cores and 64 gigs of RAM, which is very adequate for what I'm trying to accomplish. I can get away with just one, and that's okay. But what I'm trying to get to is the notion of failover. Okay, what happens if I lose one of my devices? What if it's still there to load and carry on the activities that I needed to? And I can treat them as islands. That's the beautiful thing about it, right? I can treat each one of these nets as an island, and by doing so, that allows me to extend my 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 compute capabilities in a way that doesn't create a dependency, right? So, for example, I've got these two devices here. I lose one. Okay, well, guess what? Any sort of traffic request would redirect to the other available node of the cluster or something like that. And that is okay with me. I'm okay with that. Anyways, we'll figure that out as we go along. I'm just really right now making my build list because once I have my build list established, I know where I need to go. Oh, there's something else I need. Inlets, or something like inlets. And I'm specifically using inlets because um, so Alex Ellis built inlets, which is a tool to actually allow remote access to a system using a reverse proxy in a way. But what he also did was he enhanced it so that you could actually form kind of like a tunnel to your environment if you wanted to. So I could access let's say, my Kubernetes cluster and even the underlying operating system itself from anywhere in the world. That's like super powerful. That takes a little bit of time to set up, but once you get it working, it's phenomenal because you can access you can run kubectl against a cluster that might be remote. And how it all works is it actually uses something of an exit server that's located in the cloud environment. You call on that exit server, and you actually connect to it, and then it'll tunnel back to your environment because there's something local of a process that runs that forms that tunnel to this exit server. Now, what's interesting though is that um, Alex has tuned it in such a way that you can use as a load balancer service. So in normal home environments, like who the heck's going to have access to a load balancer? Literally, unless you're deploying a software load balancer, you're still going to have to tinker around with the IP addressing, and then you're also going to have to tinker around how you get a public IP. Because if you want to access this from anywhere in the world, you need something, a public IP. So this is where inlets really comes in, because when you deploy, let's say, a service in Kubernetes and you expose it with the load balancer type service, it actually will provision a public IP for you, public IP that becomes accessible from anywhere in the world. What that means is, okay, now if you have a resource that you've exposed, you want to access that resource, well, you can do so through inlets. You can actually go ahead over to the inlets documentation, and it'll tell you a little bit more. Inlets.dev, and here it is. Actually, I'm going to stick it in my markdown file so that I have it for reference later on, because I need to come back to it. There's some things I have to configure. Okay, so I've got Civo Cloud that's going to provide the infrastructure for my management layer. Blue Mesh is my management layer, and why I need Blue Mesh is because I might deploy multiple instances of a service mesh in a cluster somewhere, right? In my case, what I'm trying to do is create a centralized point where I can go and see what's going on with workload clusters in my mesh, maybe push a common policy to them, maybe set up some sort of strict zero trust policy so that certain clusters can't talk to other clusters, or certain clusters can talk to other clusters, but it does it at a global scale. So I don't have to go to each individual cluster. So I was calling this out earlier on around multi-cluster Istio as a problem to configure. It becomes challenging. Istio multi-cluster. And there's a lot of different things you have to do here. I've actually looked through the documentation, and yeah, it looks kind of interesting on how you set this all up. There's also the element of getting trust up and running. And something like Blue Mesh takes care of that for you. Now, um, the other thing too I mentioned is I'm using ambient mesh as well, which is I think at this point is alpha or still experimental. Can't remember. Um, ambient mesh, right? approaches the service mesh in a different manner where it doesn't deploy the sidecar, but it still provides mesh-like functionality. Um, Without getting into too much detail, because I need to make sure that I build out this environment. It's another mode of the service mesh operation within Istio that allows you to run Istio-like features without deploying a sidecar to every single service. That sidecar functionality gets moved to something called a Z tunnel. And the reason why I'm doing this, especially with Kind, is that right now I think through all the testing, and mesh only works with Kind and more specifically actual Kubernetes clusters. There are some limitations in the networking with K3s that doesn't allow ambient mesh to function the way we want it to. So I won't be running ambient mesh on K3s, but I will be running it on Kind. Now, oh, there's one thing I left out here. I left out link free. So the demo build list, and we'll call this infrastructure. I can't spell. That's my build list. I'm getting kind of confused. Yeah, there's my build list. It's my app list. So I mentioned that we're going to try and run link free on Kubernetes. So on Kubernetes at Edge, which is interesting because link free shouldn't be that heavy in terms of what it needs. But I could potentially do something like each one of those is its own individual cluster, and I've deployed link free to each one of it. So now I'm going after an availability and locality thing. If I'm coming into Toronto or if I'm close to Toronto in the proximity of Toronto, then I would probably prefer to go to one of, actually, it should really be only one of those three. And then maybe I have another instance set up somewhere else that is simulating an edge on the cloud. And if the only instance where traffic might go to that link-free instance is if these nodes went down for whatever reason, right? I'm not there yet. I haven't figured out how I'm going to simulate the failover. I'm sure I can figure it out somehow or another. Um, but there are some interesting things I need to get going here. I also have to think about how I'm going to do DNS as well. I'll probably have to go figure out my DNS stuff. Oh gosh, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, let's try to figure this out piece by piece. Okay, so Civo Cloud, we need a Kubernetes cluster. So I can easily go to civo.com, and I'll log in. Yeah, you'll see my dashboard and all that fun stuff. That's all cool. Let's go to my Kubernetes environment. And I do have a cluster here. I'm actually using that cluster for something else. It's actually called 70 Days of Service Mesh. So if you go do a search for hashtag 70 Days of Service Mesh, you will likely find something that I'm working on there that gives you a more deeper insight as to how service mesh works. All right, let's go create a new cluster. And by the way, I know it seems like I'm jumping all over the place. After I create this cluster, and while it's in creation mode, I'm actually going to go into something we call a Scala draw. And then we're just going to draw this out because I want to have a rough diagram of how the architecture is going to look. And then things will be much more clear for both you, the viewer, whoever is watching, if anyone is actually watching, and then myself, right? Because I wanna make sure that we both kind of understand what's going on here. So I'm gonna go with the medium setup. Actually, yeah, medium should be fine. No, maybe I should do large. This is not going to be running long, so I'm okay if I bite the 1 month cost on that. So we'll call this Edge Compute Ops. The reason why I'm calling it Edge Compute Ops, and then maybe I'll call it underscore management, is because I just want to make sure I denote it as an Edge Compute node. I don't have to start off with 3 nodes. I can start off with 2 nodes. What I need to be sure of is that because this is my management plane, I have enough resources to deploy both my whatever like basic stuff I need, monitoring tools if I need it, but also basically mesh, which is I think kind of heavy plane. We'll check out the docs shortly. So should I start off with two or three? Maybe I'll start off with two. I can always come back in and expand the node pool. I'll use a default network. We're not doing any fancy, container networking, a new firewall, and I just need access to my Kube API server. I'm not going to install anything else. There's no need to. We'll let the cluster create. Now, we'll find out where we can install it. Ooh, there's no documentation on ambient dash. Let's go to the blog post. Maybe we can find something on ambient dash. What are resources in place? Ambient dash. I want to try. Okay, all right. So we have a get started for ambient dash. Let's go put that down here so we have it as reference. Um, ambient mesh, Kubernetes, kind. I'll add some documentation on how to get kind up and running. It's very easy. As long as you have Ubuntu or some recent flavor of Linux running, we're good to go. So I don't have to do anything for the management layer other than deploy it. So I can just say deployed. What preview is going to see what it looks like? Oh, nice. Okay, comes out really nice. Perfect. Um, what else am I going to do? Oh yeah, let's go look for link free. Okay, so we've got link free. There's my profile. Let's go to GitHub. There's link free. There's Kubernetes. Let's look at the deployment manifest. Oh, it's a single container. Interesting. That's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not overly concerned about the fact that it's a single container. What I can do is, what's the service? Oh, this is the cluster IP setup. And then, oh, okay, no, he set up ingress. Okay, so he's using an ingress resource. We won't use an ingress resource per se. We're actually going to use Istio ingress gateway to achieve this. So when we deploy, okay, let me back up a bit. Let me explain what's going on here so that people understand what I am talking about. So there are three components to this configuration for link free. The first component is the deployment, which basically says, here's how I want you to deploy the link-free container to Kubernetes. And in fact, it says there are going to be two replicas or two copies of that container. This is where that image is coming from, and it's called an API. I'm not sure why. This is the port that I'm going to access it on, and that's pretty much it. Now, when we go back to this folder, if we go to the ingress, so if you go to the ingress here, right, now I have another idea to contribute back into AnyHub because I'll get this as a setup for all of y'all that you can just fork at some point, file a PR at some point. Okay, this is another to do. Why am I tangenting right now? Let's get back on track here. So this file right here, actually, let's not talk about it. I talked about the deployment. This is how we deploy the container artifacts to Kubernetes. The service is how we are able to communicate with that container. So we have an app running in a container that runs inside of the pod. We need to communicate to that pod. We don't know its IP. Let's pretend we don't know its IP. But if we put a label on it, we're able to access it, through a more load balanced IP. But in this configuration specifically, it's a cluster IP type of service, meaning it's only internally accessible. So you have to use another mechanism to expose the service. Now, this is why Eddie has specified 3 months ago. This is why Eddie has specified an ingress resource here. So let's read through the rules. Um, oh, okay. So all he's saying is that if you come into linktree.eddyhub.org, or if you come into linktree.eddyhub.io, or if you point your browser, same thing, if you point your browser to linktree.eddyhubcommunity.org, then it will redirect you to just there are no paths other than the EddyHub Linktree service, and that's okay. We can test this out on a cluster. We can even deploy this to some thunderstorm and see how that works, just to see, if it's up and operational. What I'm going to do is let's. Did I fork this already? Yeah, I have a fork. Okay, let's go to my fork. Let us sync the fork. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, can I copy these files easily? I don't know. I got to figure out a way to copy them. But ideally, what I want to do is copy. Maybe there's a work. I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, so you know what? I will copy it to my own repo. What I'm going to do is let me wait to where it is at the moment because it's in my branch or my port. Um, what I can do is create a new file. I think I basically have what I need, by the way. What I need to do is enhance it so that I can now we can draw a little diagram, which we will do in a moment. But I just wanted to make sure I have like kind of a baseline. So let's go ahead and convert this baseline to diagram. Let's go to our draw. I have another account. So go to actually I'm in my solo account. So which I don't think you can see this window. No, yeah, you can't see it. You can see me typing in my. You can't see me typing in anything actually. You just no, that way. That's great. I got another button. Mm, all right. So I got that in. Okay, let's. Yeah, you can see some of the stuff that's going on, but let me just narrow it down for a second here. All right. So, what do we want to do? What do we want to do? Yeah, let's create some stuff here. You know what ends up happening? I end up drawing a bunch of boxes, and then what ends up happening is we'll call this the Civo Cloud Bakeries Management Layer with blue mesh. All right, so we have that there. This is a starting point, right? Like this is kind of how I roll. So I got a starting point. Kubernetes. I'll put in that some diagrams and documents afterwards. And what I'll also do is I'll go further down here, and I'll call this edge compute instance on network one, and then I'm just going to copy that, paste that down here, paste another one over here, do some network two, three. Okay, let's see here. So we got three edge compute instances. I wanna change the color scheme so that it's much more identifiable that it's this layer versus that layer. Make the border a little bit more intentional. Oops. Then I can make that. Oop, that looks good. No, I'm not gonna fill it like that. Okay, leave it like that. Ooh, I don't know. I really like that. Yeah, that's better. Ooh, that's way better. Okay, and then we can make these all like, I don't know, purple. Purple, I don't know. I like purple. It's a nice calming color. I don't know about y'all. Um, then I could adjust the opacity a little bit. Now, like one thing I will mention is that these could be geographically anywhere. Like heck, they could be one could be in Toronto, another one could be in the UK or specifically, I don't know, Edinburgh, and then the last one could be somewhere in I don't know, Singapore, for example. And you know, one of the things that edge compute offers up is very much like a content delivery style of a network. Like that's how I've always viewed edge compute. It's like something that you roll your own, you manage your own, um, but the key aspect of it is that you control it, right? Like you own it now. And that's a good thing. I actually like the fact that you can own your own cloud and create the edge that you want. But the thing to consider, right? Like having to do this at scale, if you don't have like a repeatable process, um, and you haven't really thought this out, like you can't keep doing this by hand. Like I wouldn't want to build this by hand every single time I do this. Deploy this. I probably built some automation around this, which I probably will do at some point. But for the sake of getting my demo up and running, I just want to make sure I have all the right pieces in place. So in actuality, what's going on here is these black lines, I'm going to actually turn them into red lines, which if I can figure out how to do, there we go. Make that a little darker, a lot thicker. There we go. Okay. So now we have a rough visualization. What does this stack actually look like? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out the stack here as more defined. Ooh, yeah, that looks interesting, doesn't it? So what I'm trying to emulate is that there's, this is a physical nut right here. Then you've got your Linux layer, and then you've got your Kubernetes layer. Then you got one more layer, which is your service mesh layer. So I'll figure this out in a second. I don't know. I just like tinkering with how things look eventually. You know what's going to happen? I mean, I'm probably going to just literally delete these two anyways, and then copy this over to these two because it's so inefficient like that. Uh, I'll just do Linux OS layer. And you know what I will do is I'm going to have to change this to a different color. That can stay opaque. But this doesn't have to be. That's how you can do that. Okay, then we'll call this the Kubernetes find layer, right? So I'm going to change this back because I really don't like that background a lot. Oh, I love how it kept that. Okay, cool. And then we'll do much better. Oh, it makes a world of a difference in being able to read things. Okay, okay. The only other thing I'm going to add is inlets. So I have to put out where inlets is. Now, every time I have a red line here, I want to say that this is the management layer. Maybe I'll turn this a little bit. And why I want to assume this is the management layer is because so there's something interesting about how a multi-cluster environment would work, right? If I have services that live on this side, I want to talk to something on this. Not that this would ever happen. I mean, maybe it would. Actually, it could happen. But in my case, it's not going to. But let's just say we ever wanted to do something like that. Um, I need a data path to get there, right? So I have a few data paths that I can take. I can take a local path that will exit my local host and then exit and go through its local TCP IP stack. Or I could use the Istio egress gateway. If I'm using Istio, I can use the Istio egress gateway to direct my traffic towards a specific endpoint or something like that. But to facilitate this, I actually need inlets. So inlets actually live somewhere around here in the sense that I will deploy, I'm going to make a little small square here, and I'll call this inlets. All right, so now inlets is going to provide that load balancing service for us when we need it. And I'll draw out a separate data path. Now you're going to see me do the thing that I said I was going to do because I should have done this from the start, but it's all good. It's all good. Um, we go. That was easy, assuming that. Okay, yeah, we're pretty much there. Okay, so we have a rough idea of how we want this to look. I'm trying to think what else we'll do or how else we'll do this. Dang it! Just realized that I got to. There we go. All right. Now, what I will also write up here is we'll change the color of this. Yeah, link free. And I actually want to denote the apps. So I want to make them look different because I also want to fit in one more app. It actually has to be management plane agent that is configured from here. Now, you don't have to use the management plane agent. Um, What I actually am trying to visualize with y'all is like how this all looks. If you were trying to look at this from a grander scale, then you probably would want to have more of a higher layer tool that does this for you. Some of that data can go through this red line right here that you see, because the agent itself is going to capture some of that. So let me set that up for you, or let me show you what that really looks like here. So I'm going to change this, and then I'm going to use, yeah, black. No, that's not what I want to do. The background. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Yeah, you would think that I would just literally select all of these objects. And then, I'm going to shrink this. I'm doing that again where I really need to delete things, right? I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna call this GM. I want it to sit right there or right there, somewhere around there. Yeah, yeah, that looks what I need it to look like. Okay. And then I will change the color of that because there we go. I like how that looks. All right. Shape up in the way I want it. See, sometimes when I actually do things on public, I feel like I need to be a little bit more. No, it just adds a good level of pressure, in my opinion. Um, so we've got part of this running, right? So what is inlets going to do? I think inlets needs to be a different color because I want to emphasize the fact that inlets is not the app in question. It is. It's not a good color to use. Can't use green. Can't use orange. Gray. No, it's going to be too similar. Yeah, I'll use a dark gray for now. All right, so inlets is going to give us our load balancer. There's something else I wanted to mention too. So with respect to Istio, um, the concept of ingress is provided through the Istio ingress gateway. So the Istio ingress gateway is something that gets deployed when you decide you want to expose or provide an entry point to access routes. It's actually very much like an API gateway, but on its own, it can't provide all the API gateway functionality. So you actually need to either write that on top of the gateway as Envoy filters, or use something that already does it for you, like Bluemesh. Maybe we might explore turning that into an API gateway, but I don't need to at the moment, because all what I need to implement can happen within the mesh layer itself. So what I will end up doing is deploying the Istio Ingress gateway, which is going to get its public IP from inlets. Inlets is going to tunnel that to an exit server so that when I connect to, let's say, Link3 is going to be exposed to that Istio Ingress gateway. Actually, let me actually draw that out so you can better understand this. Let me copy inlets Link3, put this over here. And then one thing I'm going to draw out to Istio Ingress. Ingress gateway. I'm gonna make this a different color too, so that we can see what it's up to. Nah. Okay. So hold on a second. I got like 10 minutes left to do this off. So at least I can get something accomplished, and then I can get this diagram added into my demo repo. And then yeah, this will be pretty good. Yeah, I just gotta get the artifacts up and running. I'll make this a good demo. Promise you. I feel a lot more confident, but I'm just trying to think of some things here. I don't need link free right now. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. I'm gonna draw a thing. Let's see if I can get a. I'm wondering if I can get a thing of some sort, a cloud of some sort. No, no. I can freehand draw a cloud. There you go. There's my freehand cloud drawing. Okay. Oh yeah, it's a static cloud. Okay. I did. I did. Dang it. All right. Oh no, I can move it. Nice. Okay, I was worried about that for a second. This is a. I'm basically using any cloud service. I think based off of how Analytics works, um, it actually will give you the option to use. I think AWS, GCP, Linode or Linode, however you pronounce it, DigitalOcean, and even there's some few others. I think Civo could be one of them. But I haven't tested that out. All right, Inlet's exit server. So once it hits this little cloud, right? What this means is it's it's in the public space at this point, right? All right, it's in the public space. So I, as an end user with any IP from anywhere in the world, should be able to access. But how it flows is make it as green. I don't know, green doesn't look that good with this. Yeah, okay. And then this is not going to be dotted. This is going to be direct. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with this. It's going to be direct as well. Okay. So what ends up happening is, and oh, I should probably specify. Let's say link3.io. That should be. I colors are not. I wish the palette was a lot nicer, but it's okay. So when I go to linktree.io, right? What ends up happening is it's supposed to hit the Istio Ingress gateway. Let me try that again. So it's supposed to hit the Istio Ingress gateway. But what is it actually hitting? What is the Istio Ingress gateway doing? The Istio Ingress gateway is listening for requests coming into linktree.io on the default port of 80, let's just say. Okay? In fact, as long as you just type in linktree.io, it should be, yeah, when you type in linktree.io, it should direct you to the right port and all of that stuff. But the main things are the port that we're entering on and that we're listening for, and the host that we're listening for. Now, the Istio Ingress Gateway is actually listening for this, except where it's getting its IP information from is actually up here. So the real flow of traffic is more like, let me draw this out. User request, and I'm going to change this to a, this should be a red. Oh, okay, so that user request comes in here. But where it's actually going is, let's follow the arrow. Oops, maybe I should have. Okay, so that seems kind of wonky, but let me explain this. All right. So in order to access linkfree.io, that translates to a public address, right? Linkfree.io translates to, let's say, 222.222.222.1. But where does 222.222.222.1 live? Actually, let's make it even simpler. 2.2.2.1. That actually lives up here. So whenever I'm accessing linkfree.io, it actually is entering through, and I'm going to use a different color to demonstrate this. It's actually entering here. So when you make the request, while you think you're actually going through here, you're actually entering in through the exit server. The exit server tunnels that request to the inlet server that's local to the cluster. The inlet's client, this is actually the client, is actually giving the Istio Ingress gateway its load balancer IP. And because of that load balancer IP now, I can take that load balancer IP and access the link free resource. But I have to provide a definition here for the Istio Ingress gateway. And we haven't talked about it yet. It's actually called a virtual service resource. Once I get it deployed into Kubernetes, I'm just basically telling the gateway, hey, communicate with this virtual resource to route to the link free service. But it's kind of a roundabout way. My user request comes in. What actually happens is I'm trying to go to linkfree.io, but realistically, I'm coming into the cloud service. So my request actually goes to the cloud service exit server or the inlet's exit server on that IP address that it's providing me. And it's tunneling all the way to inlets that's local to the cluster. Inlets is then giving the Istio Ingress gateway its IP, and the Istio Ingress gateway is then providing an exit point for Linkfree, or for us to be able to communicate with Linkfree. So it's kind of fascinating how this all works out. Um, Getting this configured is actually not going to be that challenging, in my opinion. Um, I think the bigger challenge is really going to be getting this all working in a good amount of time. That should give you an idea of where Linkfree is. I really should not do this. I should really change the direction here. Let me do this way. There we go. That makes it a lot better. It doesn't look super wonky anymore. Like in the sense, like I kind of hacked away at it. It actually looks like, this is the kind of request I expect to see flow through. Um, and to make it a lot more readable, maybe I'll use orange, and I'll make it a little bit more opaque, or a little less opaque, I should say. Okay, so that's how it really flows. Okay, so my request really goes to the cloud service when I'm really trying to go to linkfree.io. But I have what I need for my demo in terms of an architecture. I'm not done yet. I still have a bunch of things I have to do. So I have a couple of minutes. Let's go ahead and make some edits here. And I'm gonna say to do, give it a date, January 25th, 2023. What we have to do, build, actually deploy mesh on Civo V3's cluster. I need to set up time and Istio ambient on Ubuntu Edge 1. I need to set up my gateway and virtual service resources for Istio to expose um, link free. Oh, and I have to deploy link free via and expose via Istio. That's what I got to do next. I'd love to continue this right now, but I actually have a Twitter space that I'm going to be doing very shortly. And I think Twitter.com. Let's see what Twitter spaces are going on. Barsha put up. Here we go. This is the one we want to get to. So Barsha has a Twitter space starting soon. Go to Barsha. Go to profile. This is Puddle. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So I'm doing a Twitter space, running a conference called Puddle in Toronto. It's happening this year in May 17th and 18th. Everyone should attend. Everyone should try to submit a CFP if they can. There's about 35 plus days open for the CFP. And by the way, if you're a sponsor, you're more than welcome to. But anyways, going back to it, right? Going back to okay, I didn't even. Wow, I'm terrible. I didn't even share my screen. So let me share my screen here. You can see my screen now. You head over to Barsha's profile, right? She's twitter.com, the Barsha blog, and then head down to this little tweet here. She's even talked about the upcoming launch space about Puddle. So I think y'all should check it out. Come by. Like I said, I'm not going to repeat everything again. But yeah, I'm running Coop Huddle in Toronto with a bunch of folks. So please check it out. All right, let me close this off. Let me just say one last thing here. I'm going to add my to-dos and hopefully I get some time again to stream and then we can kind of continue the rest of it. I'm hoping to try and do this between the next few days, between today and tomorrow. Take care, y'all. I will catch y'all soon. And hopefully we can continue this